I am delighted being here. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much to the leadership at the Allegheny Health Network, Talk Tons, Toastmasters Club for having me here. It's a very humbling experience. Yes, I do have a blog, and it's called What and Why First, and I typically start my blog by saying, hi, my name is Josue Batista. I am a business and technology strategist. Welcome to this special segment of What and Why First. This time, I'd like to have a conversation with you. In fact, I may be sitting sometimes because I don't want it to sound like a lecture. So basically, we're going to take a long trip. So let's start with nothing. Just imagine for a moment nothingness. There is no sound, there is no light, there's no colors, there is no temperature, nothing exists. And then, all of a sudden, Big Bang. So in a fraction of a second, an enormous amount of energy was dispersed and created what we know today as the universe, with everything that is in it. It's amazing. Sometimes I enjoy looking at videos just to understand how vast and how large our universe is. And of course, we are in this little galaxy that we call the Milky Way, that is kind of the stars that we see at night. And then we have this little blue marble in the middle of nowhere that we call home, with everything in it. Beautiful things. We're going to concentrate on the beautiful things right now. I know that there are other things that are not that beautiful. But think about this. Everything that we see, hear, and sense is a connection to that Big Bang at the very beginning. Because think about this for a moment. Light. I don't want to get scientific here, but light is an electromagnetic wave. And according to the frequency, it has different colors. We see a range of that, but there is a wide aspect of colors on that. Some animals, for example, are able to see other colors that we don't see. But it is a frequency that actually started back then. The fact that we can see and feel the sun is because of that energy. But there is something very unique about the world that we have as well here, is that we can also hear things and we can produce sound. And that is different because sound is a different wave. It needs a medium to be communicated. How many of you have seen the Star Wars movies and there is all kind of sounds in space? Well, that is not true. There is no sound in space because it's empty. There is no medium for the sound to actually go from one point to another. But in our space, there is sound because we have medium, we have air. And that is what happens. Those vibrations go to our ears and then produces the sound. So in addition to all the beautiful things that we have in our planet, we have, of course, plenty of us. Very diverse us, right? Different nationalities, different backgrounds, religions, experiences. I believe, in my opinion, and I am a humanist, I believe as humans, we are the most beautiful aspect of this planet, right? Because we are extremely unique, extremely unique. And over time, you probably know this, regardless of nationalities, background, more than often, we use words. From the very beginning, way back in time, there was a point that differentiated us from every other species on the planet. We are able to utter words to communicate facts, information, different languages, but still there is a pattern of communication, right? Some of us speak more than one language, some others speak just their native language. That is perfectly fine. There is this uniqueness, connection, this unique connection between words and us as human. And that makes us extremely unique. So think about this. At the very beginning of time, words were used to pretty much communicate facts and perhaps some basic information. But we are humans, right? So it didn't take long for storytelling to come around, right? Because there was a way to actually communicate knowledge. And for thousands of years, millennia, knowledge was communicated orally, right? From one generation to the next. I grew up in Venezuela. My great-grandmother, she passed away when she was 105. She was very, very fortunate, very blessed to live that long. And I was 5 years old. And I remember sitting around with her, and she would tell us stories when she was my age from her grandmother and great-mother. And I'm thinking today about that. I said, wow, I was listening to stories probably 150, 200 years old. She never learned to speak Spanish properly because she was Caribbean Indian. But it was amazing. Now I reflect on that. So we have this capacity to use stories. We're wired for stories. We're going to see that in a moment in more detail. Now there is one more evolution, part of the evolution of our communication. At one point we started tinkering with, I need to get this to someone, I need to store this information here. And someone came with a clever idea of why not to start codifying some of that communication. And of course, from there, we know what happened, right? So eventually, those written words became books, and with Gutenberg, we have now a plethora of books, of every thousand, millions of books, different languages, all different ages, every place. Again, growing, how many of you have ever had an Encyclopedia Britannica at home? You probably are giving away your age. I mean, there was no internet when I was growing up either. And I remember my dad, we were too poor to have an encyclopedia at home, encyclopedias. So my dad one point he got a job for a company called Salvat. Salvat is a Spanish company from Spain, and they make these encyclopedias. They still do, and they do a lot of books and things today. So his job was to go to visit people who owe money, because typically the encyclopedias were given to people in payments, in installments for them to pay. My poor dad, his job was to go and collect the money, right? So one day, someone said to him, I don't want the encyclopedia anymore, just take it. So he got the encyclopedia, he tried to take it back to the office. Nobody knew what to do with it, and he suggested, can I keep it? And he did. And for me, it was amazing to have. I loved books from the very beginning. I still treasure them. There was only one deficiency. The one for the R was not there. The R to S was missing. So I never learned about Russia. One time when I was looking for scholarships to go to some place, I went to the Russian embassy, but I was not familiar with them because I never learned anything about Russia. Thank goodness, right? So, but I know about. At that time, I knew about the United States, so that was great. So again, the written word allows us now to not just to store knowledge, but also share it at a larger capacity, right? There was a time that books only were for privileged people, rich people, but Gutenberg and all the technology that we have makes that available today. And of course, that is changing. That is changing tremendously. I have this book here as an example of an old-fashioned book. This from this gentleman here. His name is John McWhorter. He's my hero. I love linguistics. And he's a professor of linguistics at Columbia University in New York. And he says something very interesting about the progression from words to written language, right? He says, humans have been around for approximately, I think, 150,000 years. That is what an estimation of the speaking part. I mean, we have been longer, but the speaking portion have been around 150,000 years. He says, if you take 150,000 and make that like a 24-hour clock, meaning 24 hours is 150,000 years, that means we started writing at 11:07 p.m. Think about that for a moment. We are wired for communication, verbal, oral communication. Most of our history is based on oral communication. Our languages are based on connections and mixing of languages over time, based on oral communication as well. Study any language and you will find roots and connections to almost any place in the world, right? Why? Because of that context. Very interesting topic there. So what does that mean? That means that we are wired for stories. We are storytellers. Our ears perk up when we hear once upon a time. Wow, I want to hear what is next, right? And we get ingrained into the story because we're wired for that. It means that, engage us more because, one thing is to provide, facts, but even if it's written, but it's a story, we are more engaged. And that is something that our brain, as you can see here, is connected. There are done studies that when someone is telling a story, some people have equipment to measure their brain waves. And at one point, they are in sync. The storyteller and the person listening to the story is fascinating. So all those things, the coupling, the dopamine that makes us feel good, the fact that this activity in our context means that we are like experiencing what we're hearing or reading, and also we mirror in our brain what is happening as well. So the bottom line is stories, and especially verbal ones, are unique to us. We have a natural, inherent ability to be connected to that. So why not to take advantage of it, right? Like Simon Sinek says, the head decides, but the heart commits. So we may be hearing something, but that gut feeling, the only way to get there is through that emotional connection that we have to our brain. How many of you know Simon Sinek? If you haven't, please check him out. He's a great speaker, and he's missing the what. I have the what, he has the why. Mine is, you have to start with the what as well, but he's more high level. I love it. He's very good. He's a very good guy. So check him out. So where are we at this point? So we have established that as humans, we are connected to speaking, right, to the speaking word, and we are engaged into it. And there is an evidence that today we see that, how many of you have Audible? But I really enjoy that. In my commute, that is my way to read books. I just read, I'm reading right now, The Startup Way from Eric Ries, which is a great book. And I just got it from Audible, right? So books are in decline, hard books, but Audible actually is actually 40% annual increase. Because people enjoy more the reading, the listening part of it. And we have all the assistants, right? I use Siri sometimes. Even I think it adapts to my speaking because I have an accent. So if I speak in English, it knows pretty much with high accuracy what I'm asking. Of course, if I use Spanish, it's fine. If I know a little bit of German, it's fine as well. So it's amazing how these technologies are taking precedent and taking advantage of that natural ability and connection that we have. So the human voice, according to the MIT Sloan, is actually the most important technology this year, back in 2017. So it is significant. I think I already made the point, right? I think you would agree with me that it is important. So I think the question now is, how do we connect this to the reason that we're here, right? So I believe the future is 3D. What does that mean is that the future is digital, it's going to be distributed, and it's going to be decentralized. I believe that that is the future. It feels like when the internet was getting started back in the late 90s and it was getting popular, the first browser came up and people were like experimenting with it, right? So on that premise, if you are not convinced enough, think about this. A child born in the US today, most likely, he or she might never need to have a driver's license. Think about that for a moment. And that is not that far off. 16 years is nothing, really. That is like, what, 2 presidents? I don't know. It's mind-boggling. Think of the advance that we have now, and in 16 years, 10 years down the road, that child will never, what is a driver's license? What was that? Right? So how is that going to affect our life, our businesses, our context, our educational systems? Are we teaching the right things? It's not a conversation, Amy. You are in the educational leadership aspect. It's a conversation that, who's having those conversations? Right? So again, I think I made a point. The future is in that direction. It's going in the direction of being digital. So we need to pay attention to that, right? So here's where Toastmasters comes into place. Toastmasters is an international organization. Toastmasters is not just the club, it is an international organization with significant number of members, countries, clubs. And what is it? Toastmasters pretty much started in 1924, excuse me. 2018, they started with a very exciting new program that they call Pathways, and it's basically an educational program. But it's not just about speaking. It's not about just speaking in front of people. In fact, I joined Toastmasters. When I joined Toastmasters back in 2008, the reason that I joined is because I was very insecure about my, English is not my first language. I know better Italian than at that time than English. So I wanted to have a safe space to practice, and that was actually the motivation. I really wanted to get that feedback. And before every speech, I will tell the evaluator, please look at my pronunciation, enunciation, and speed. I know that if I speak too fast and I mispronounce something, people are going to get lost, right? Because most of us, it's difficult sometimes, right? I was very conscious of that. But it's not just about it. And in a moment, I want to tell you what for me meant. So anyway, it's an organization that has been around for a significant amount of time. It has core competencies. I encourage you to learn more about them. We're not going to go over those right now. But think about this. It's not just public speaking, but also relationships, leadership, management. Be more confident speaking in front of others and with others. That is key. And also they has 10 specialized learning paths. I think it's exciting, just this, and they're adding more. So I really encourage you to look into that because, again, we already established that yes, we have all these technologies coming, right? But as humans, still that connection that we want is at the verbal oral communication level, regardless of all the technologies. If you want to really engage someone else, you really want to engage your team, you want to persuade people to take one action or another, you are better off by doing that verbally, perhaps even in person, rather than through a digital communication. So I really encourage you to look to this. It's good for everybody. In my case, as an international professional, it was great for me. It's pretty much adaptable to anyone. And for companies as well, because everybody wins. And I'm very appreciative of the leadership of AHN and also Highmark, that they are, in this case, supporting the cause, but also I really encourage the leadership to support the attendance to the meetings, because that is the place at the club where the learning happens, actually. So yeah, it's only perhaps twice a month or maybe more often, but we need that support, right? That air cover to attend our meetings. So that is great because it's a win-win for everybody. So again, when I was in Toastmasters, I have the opportunity to attend training and events in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was in leadership. I went to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Las Vegas in 2015, Washington, D.C. 2016. I got training in different places. I have a great opportunity for me as a leader to visit different locations and different places over time. You don't have to go to that level. You don't have to, like I did. I went all the way to the district leadership. But if you do, the most important thing is not the places, it's the people that you meet from all over the world. In fact, that gave me the confidence when an opportunity came for people to speak at Saudi Arabia in December. I already was in an international context, so it was not that far off for me to take on that trip, and speak there. So I really encourage you to look into that as well. Now we're getting close to the time here, so I just want to make sure that you get at least 3 details from this conversation. Number one is that we are unique. We are here for a reason. In fact, this presentation, if we can make it available, Amy, I'll give you, it has a longer presentation with a little bit more details as to what are the odds that we're here, right here, in this planet, right? Every one of us has a uniqueness that makes us so important, so interesting, so unique, right? So our voice has power. Take advantage of it, independent of your background. It doesn't matter if you don't want to go into leadership or you don't want to be a manager, that's okay. But if you want to communicate better, express your ideas better, be more concise, more clever in your communications. Toastmasters International is a splendid opportunity to do that. And keep that in mind, your voice has power. Mr. Toastmaster.